Our end goal here, like I said, is to have more Montana food on all Montana plates. And if we're going to do that, we have to both increase the demand for local food, both at the individual consumer level and also from institutional and wholesale buyers. So, thinking about schools, hospitals, grocery stores, retail outlets, etc., and having Montana grown foods be as available and prevalent on, grocery store shelves and anywhere else compared to other options.
In this episode of Voices from the Field, NCAT local food specialist Molly Kirkham talks with Erin Austin of Abundant Montana. Abundant Montana is a nonprofit that helps create a more resilient and reliable food system by developing educational campaigns about local foods, providing digital marketing and promotion assistance, and fostering business-to-business connections for Montana food and farming businesses. To that end, Erin and Molly talk about Abundant Montana's recent online producer-buyer meetup event, Abundant Connections. Molly and Erin discussed the need Abundant Montana saw that led to the event's format, what went well, who connected at the event, and what the future looks like for Abundant Connections. Let's listen.
Hi, I'm Molly Kirkham, local food specialist for the National Center for Appropriate Technology. I'm based in the Rocky Mountain West Regional Office. In this episode, I speak with Erin Austin. Erin is the Director of Community Partners and Sales at Abundant Montana. Today, we are chatting about their producer-buyer networking events called Abundant Connections. This podcast is an addition to a case study on Abundant Connections that is featured in the Bringing the Farm to School Through New Connections, a guide to planning producer-buyer networking events. Thanks for being here, Erin.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So could you describe your organization and your role within the organization?
Sure. Abundant Montana is an organization growing a more resilient and reliable Montana food system for all Montanans. We are a program of the nonprofit Arrow, our kind of mother nonprofit, who's been a producer-centric organization working to build a more sustainable Montana for all since its founding 50 years ago in 1974. So we are just really committed to building strong local food systems in Montana. And right now our goal is to help get more Montana food on all Montana plates, which we're doing a couple different ways, primarily through helping to build consumer demand for local food, helping people understand why eating local food matters and helping them find local food in the state. Also helping the food and farm businesses that are growing and supplying our Montana food build their market channels in state, which includes this work of business-to-business connections that we'll talk about today. So my role in the organization, I'm our Director of Community Partners and Sales, and that means I get to build relationships with organizations across the state and find opportunities to collaborate in a whole variety of ways.
Awesome. Yeah, if everyone else is on your the producer map as much as I am, then I think it's probably one of the most used websites in the state.
Love to hear that.
So what brought you to holding producer-buyer networking events?
Great question. So this work is core to our purpose at Abundant Montana and our programming. Our end goal here, like I said, is to have more Montana food on all Montana plates. And if we're going to do that, we have to both increase the demand for local food, both at the individual consumer level and also from institutional and wholesale buyers. So, thinking about schools, hospitals, grocery stores, retail outlets, etc., and having Montana grown foods be as available and prevalent on, grocery store shelves and anywhere else compared to other options. The other element there is that, the producers need reliable and consistent market channels where they can sell their products in state. So that consistent demand is huge for them. So this type of network weaving and relationship building and connections work is just central to how we are trying to make change in building a more resilient and reliable food system in Montana. And then we were lucky enough to have a specialty crop block grant that helped fund the first Abundant Connections event. And that grant was specifically focused on supporting specialty crop growers in Montana. And so we thought, well, how fabulous if we have some grant funding that could support this type of producer to buyer, producer seller connections, and help support some new sales opportunities. Let's pursue this kind of event.
Awesome. That's wonderful. I didn't know it was funded by a specialty crop block grant. There's such
Yeah.
great support in the state.
Yes.
And then can you describe a little bit about the structure of the event?
Yeah. So our first Abundant Connections event, it was a week-long virtual event designed to help bridge the gap between local food buyers and producers in Montana. So because it was all virtual and we held it over the week of Valentine's Day, which was cute, we asked
Making matches during Valentine's Day.
We asked everybody to fill out a profile ahead of time for their business, whether they were a farmer rancher or somebody interested in purchasing local food. And we wanted to know if you were a producer, what products you were growing or raising, quantities, and the reach of your distribution and delivery. And then the same information, but from the inverse, from the buyers. So what products were you looking for, in what quantities, and how far were you willing to travel to procure those items? And we then created ahead of time a directory that we shared with everybody that was both a directory of producers and then a directory of buyers. And we had representation from across the state, which is awesome. So we had producers that, were veggie farmers, we had meat, grains, value-added products represented. And then we had buyers from retail operations, restaurants, K through 12 schools, and other institutions. So a really diverse spread on both sides, which was really exciting. And then the flow of the week itself, we had talked with folks in Montana who had run similar events and learned some best practices. And what we decided to do was host it such that producers and buyers could set up meetings directly with each other, one-on-one, unfacilitated, on their own schedules. And we invited the buyer, anyone could initiate a meeting, but we particularly invited the buyers to initiate the meeting and to reach out to the producers that they were interested in buying, new local ingredients from. Though, like I said, anybody could reach out to anyone. And then we were on call for tech support and troubleshooting and hosted, a kickoff the Monday of the week and a closing the Friday of that week to celebrate and bring in a little bit of community, even in the virtual space.
What information about the buyers and the producers did the people involved know? Did the list have their distribution area, products?
Yep, exactly. All of the above. So name, products, distribution area, and contact information, I believe.
And was it open to all types of producers and all types of buyers?
It was. So our purview as an organization, our focus is producers who are growing food in Montana and selling at least some portion of it in the state. And from the buyer side, we were also really interested in local buyers. So folks based in Montana who wanted to buy Montana grown food, per our goal of building a stronger food system in Montana, really wanting to foster those in-state relationships. And given the nature of the funding that we did have support from the USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant, we did special outreach and targeted specialty crop growers, though everyone was invited. And we, like I mentioned, we certainly had ranchers and value-added products and grains and other folks represented also at the event.
Awesome. And so then how many buyers and how many producers participated?
Yeah, we were excited with the numbers for our first go at this. We had just shy of 60 producers. I think it was 58 exactly. And 45 buyers. So we're also excited to see the parity in the number of registrants that were producers and that were buyers.
Don't have time to stay up to date on the freshest sustainable agriculture news, events, and funding opportunities? You can trust NCAT to keep you connected with our weekly harvest e-newsletter. Subscribe today at ncat.org and get your weekly harvest delivered each Wednesday.
So it felt like that was again like a really strong showing. This is also in February, which can be kind of an off season for a lot of these folks, and saw positive metrics and outcomes. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but I can share a little bit about how many meetings actually happened and
Yeah, go ahead.
great. Yeah. So we had 59 meetings get scheduled directly between producers and buyers the week itself. And then a number of meetings actually got scheduled around the edges, like before and after the event. So I think we had just over 70 meetings total,
Wow.
71, if you will, between the producers and buyers, which felt just like a huge success and some, new connections and maybe some surprising connections for folks that they wouldn't have pursued prior to this event, which is great.
Do you know if some producers and some buyers had multiple events with different or multiple meetings with different parties? Or was it usually just like a producer and buyer connecting, and so all those other meetings were with different people?
Yeah, good question. Definitely, I think the event was like many things, what the participants made of it. So we definitely had some really active participants who had, 5+ different meetings and took advantage
Wow.
of the week and the directories and really reached out to folks to connect with new sales opportunities. And then I am sure there were some folks who were more passive and perhaps didn't get a meeting scheduled during the week too.
So it sounds like you definitely met your target numbers.
Yeah. I think for the grant, we were hoping for 15 connections and
Oh,
we had
wow.
over 70. So that was great news.
Oh, that's so great that you got so many people involved. How did you promote the event?
We have a pretty active social media and newsletter outreach to food and farm businesses in the state of Montana. And for those who are unfamiliar with Abundant Montana, we help map local food providers in the state. So we have what we call the Find Food and Farms map that lists farms and ranches, farmers markets, grocery stores, retail outlets, community gardens, et cetera, craft beverages that are either growing Montana grown food and or sourcing or selling Montana grown food and products in the state. And so also did some outreach, to all of our listeners and partners and phone calls, and then shared the event with our strategic partners across the state who also shared it with their networks, which was awesome. And we partnered on this event and a few others in 2023, actually, with the Montana Farm to School Network, who helped bring in a lot of the institutional buyers in the K through 12 schools specifically too.
Oh, awesome. Do you have an estimate of how many schools participated?
Ooh, I could find the number, but not off the top of my head.
Yeah, sorry, I pulled that one out.
All good.
So were there any resources or information sessions that you encourage producers and buyers to review before meeting with the other party?
We definitely encourage folks to look at the directories ahead of time and to come with some pretty informed questions and, an awareness of the products they were looking for to make best use of everyone's time. And I think that worked well. I think there was really targeted outreach and people were, how do I want to say it? Like knew who they wanted to talk to, knew what products they were looking for, knew the areas they were willing to drive to and pick foods up from, or the distribution routes, et cetera. So I think that was really helpful to have that kind of directory ahead of time for people to peruse and craft their schedule for the week and their outreach for the week.
Awesome. And do you know how many successful procurement relationships actually formed after those meetings?
Yeah, so we sent a follow-up survey to everybody who attended, and of the people that responded to our survey, which I think was about 25% of total attendees, but 80% of the people that responded said that they made a new connection to a prospective buyer or seller. So I think that's about 20 businesses that said they made a new connection because of the event, which was super exciting. And whether that connection led to a sale, we don't know, though strongly believe that even connecting in that way and the ripple effects and relationship building and network building has positive effects, even if it didn't turn into a sale because of this specific opportunity. Feels really exciting though to us that, 20 folks made a new connection with a prospective buyer or seller.
Yeah, totally. Even just like so buyers and producers know what's out there and what opportunities are, and then that just increases their opportunity for connection with other people in the area. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And, heard from a lot of folks, let's see, like a representative with Timeless Natural Food, Graham Kerwin, exactly to your point, was really excited about learning about new innovations in school meal programs and those local markets and like the barriers that schools were finding to access more accessible and affordable local foods. And we had folks from food banks attend who talked about, they actually took some meetings offline and met up in person with growers in their area. And like I know the Missoula Food Bank met with the Western Montana Growers Co-op, which was exciting to see. And heard from some other producers like Logan Mannix with Mannix Family Beef that he was, surprised at one business that reached out to him. He was like, that's not a place I would have thought of to contact or to market to on our own. So even those kinds of learnings that came out of this feel really valuable and exciting.
Totally. So I know you worked with the Montana Farm to School Network to plan the event. Were there any other partners?
They were our primary partner, and then, the USDA's specialty crop law grant funding too. So mostly this was in-house plus Montana Farm to School.
Nice. And it sounds like a perfect project for Abundant Montana because you have so much of the knowledge of like what's going on with food in the state, whether it's procurement or production.
Yes, it feels like our niche. It feels like the kind of support we can be offering.
What are some key highlights that you would like to share with organizers of other producer buyer networking events?
Good question. There's a few takeaways that felt important to me about why our event was successful. The opportunity for producers and buyers to connect one-on-one felt really valuable, and the shape of those conversations are going to be different based on who's in the room. And so for those to be personalized and set up on their own time felt really important to the success of this event. I think also encouraging buyers to reach out to producers felt like a key highlight and a unique element of our event. It, to Logan Mannix's point, prompted some connections that producers wouldn't have pursued or anticipated, and maybe expanded the table or the menu of options there. I also think having the event be virtual, comes with pros and cons, and allowed us to reach a wider audience. So we did have a spread across the state of Montana, which was really exciting. And like I've spoken to, really, I think having the directories of who it was attending be public and available to participants ahead of time was really helpful for planning, and then for folks to reference after the event as a takeaway also.
So what are some tips specifically with virtual connection or networking events that you would like to share with other organizers? I think the directory sounds like is a really big one.
Yeah, the directory is great. We also found the platform that we used for people to be able to make and schedule of meeting times with each other required us to start the meeting for them. So I would just caution the platform choice if you are doing a virtual event and you want to set it up similarly, to not require that function. It basically meant somebody from our team needed to be on call at all times. And, some meeting, we're working with food and farm businesses here. So there were some very early morning meetings and some very late night meetings, which are fabulous and nice if they're not having to rely on a third party to let everybody into the meeting.
That's so funny.
Good learnings. Yeah, I mean, and always a fan of collaboration. So working with partner organizations, I think there's a lot of interest right now in this business to business and value chain coordination space, and love that. I think it's really important as we're trying to build stronger regional food systems, and also would love to continue to see us all work together so we're not duplicating efforts here. So collaborating with others.
Totally. That always helps. And so is there anything you would do differently besides maybe disabling that function that you had to start every meeting?
We will be disabling that function. Yeah, it's a good question. I think we'll be playing with, the virtual event and the statewide reach is really positive for many reasons. And also in a state like Montana, where we're working with a really vast geography and rural populations, there is also such a gift in being able to have regional, foci, if you will, during the event. So I think we'll play with that for future events. How might we blend the two? Do we do a statewide virtual one that's complemented perhaps by in-person regional events? Or is there, some other regional networking opportunity that we bring in? Not sure what that'll look like yet, but something we're playing with.
Awesome. And then is there any future plans for Abundant Connections?
Yes, we plan to host the event annually. So stay tuned for events in 2024 and beyond. And like I said, we'll see what shape those take. Maybe, another week-long virtual event or possibly regional events hosted by our local food coordinator team or other possibilities there. We worked with the Montana Farm to School team in 2023 to host 3 events in person that were regional across the state that were called Montana Food for Montana Schools. And it was specifically focused on connecting producers to K through 12 school buyers, which was another really productive and successful event focused on a much narrower audience. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for Abundant Connections to take different shapes and manifestations. So more to come.
Awesome. I was able to attend Montana Food for Montana Schools, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to share about Abundant Connections?
Thanks. No, thanks so much for the opportunity to share a little bit about it. And I wish anyone who is hosting a producer buyer event good luck. And you're welcome to reach out to us for other tips or tricks. And if you're in Montana, would love to work with you on an event like this.
All right. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Molly.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at atra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.